Welcome, everybody, to the Over Under Movies podcast show where we take a famous film or franchise in the world of filmmaking and ask a simple question. Are they overrated or are they underrated? My name is DeAngelis. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Mr. Gabagool himself, Jason Gong.
Hello.
Jason, this is going to be our first podcast of 2024, the year of our Lord, the year of American presidential election.
Oh, yeah.
In the year of a lot of really interesting movies, today we're going to be talking about our top 5 most anticipated films of 2024. This is going to be a year of movies that is really affected by the WGA, more importantly, the SAG strikes that happened in 2023. A lot of films got put on pause for a while. A lot of films that were supposed to come out late in 2023 that got pushed into 2024 because during the SAG strike, actors were not able to market their films. So movies are getting pushed into 2024, and then movies that were supposed to be in production in the fall of 2023, they just didn't shoot at all, or their shooting was put on pause. So there's some films are being pushed back like 6-8 months, almost a year. So it's kind of a light movie slate a little bit, but there's a lot of good stuff on here still.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. When I was doing the research for this podcast, I was pleasantly surprised by how many movies I hadn't heard of that are coming out that I probably will be seeing in theaters. So I thought it was going to be a little more difficult to put together this list, but it turned out to go smoothly. I got some things on here that I think might surprise you because they surprised myself.
So the rules that we made were it has to be a film that has a release date in 2024, because there's a lot of films that are in like pre-production or could be doing principal photography in 2024. But if it's got a release date, it should be probably coming out next year. Mm-hmm. At least, obviously delays happen and films are going to be pushed back. We can't anticipate that stuff. We're just going over what we know is going to be coming out in 2024 right now. I made a top 5 list. You made a top 5 list. Any movie that is on both of our lists, we'll talk about it. Whoever has the film higher up on their list. So if I have a film at number 4 and you have it at number 1, we'll talk about it when it's at your number 1.
Yes.
Sounds good. All right. Real quick, we can start with honorable mentions. Did you have any honorable mentions on your list?
I did. So I have Deadpool 3 because, look, it's the only MCU movie coming out next year, right? I'm a simple man. I like those movies, and I like the Deadpool movies, and this one, I think, is going to be a glorified cameo fest, which I know we're all sick of, but if they're bringing back Jennifer Garner as Elektra, I kind of have to see it.
All right. That's fair. That's fair. I do not have Deadpool 3 anywhere on my list. I had a few honorable mentions. One is Nosferatu, the Robert Eggers movie that's going to be coming out on Christmas Day in 2024. So appointment viewing on Christmas morning, that Nosferatu. I also have Gladiator 2, which is coming out November 22nd. We talked about Gladiator in a recent podcast. It was a movie that I think we both enjoyed on rewatch.
Yep.
So definitely be interested in seeing that from Ridley Scott. And then I also have Civil War from Alex Garland, which had a trailer come out recently that comes out on April 26th. The movie seems like kind of like a box standard, like what if story of an American Civil War breaking out in 2023 of the Western Alliance of Texas and California. Versus the United States of America. It looks kind of bad in the trailer, but I really like Alex Garland. I like Ex Machina. I like Annihilation.
Yeah.
He is a director that I usually think of as somebody who goes like pretty deep into the ideas of his films. So it's possible, at least in my head, I'm hoping that there's going to be more to this movie. We just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I suspect it's going to subvert expectations and be like weird and creepy and stuff like that. I also have on my honorable mentions a movie called My Ex-Friend's Wedding, which is just like a mid-budget comedy from Kay Cannon, who directed the first Pitch Perfect film and Blockers, and then a Cinderella movie that I did not see and got bad reviews. But for the most part, this woman puts out really solid, funny movies.
This is a movie about female ex-best friends.
Yes.
Because I know, like, I think it was the joke on TikTok when the "How often do you think of the Roman Empire" meme came up. They said the female version of that is "How often do you think about your ex-best friend?"
Yeah, I ran that by a couple of female friends of mine, and they were like, "Oh yeah, I do think about my ex-best friend quite a bit." So that's kind of the premise of this movie. Basically, I think 4 women get this voicemail from their ex-best friend, and it's their ex-best friend calling them drunk and saying she doesn't want to get married, so they have to crash her wedding to stop it from happening. And I guess they'll like explore their various friendships through that, and I think it'll be a good, funny time.
It'll be a romp.
Yeah, truly. So, I love a good mid-budget comedy.
Do you have any other honorable mentions?
No more honorable mentions. I guess I'm excited for that Mean Girls musical. It came out on Broadway when I was living in New York, but I never got the chance to see it. I didn't want to pay like $200 to see a musical of Mean Girls, so I'm excited I'll get to just watch it when it comes out.
That's fair. All right, so getting into our top 5 lists, we'll start with yours. What was your number 5?
At number 5, I have Madam Web.
Oh my God, you Madam Web. Let's go.
The latest from the Sony Spider-Verse that does not have Spider-Man in it.
Is this just because it's Dakota Johnson?
It's Dakota Johnson.
There's a lot of very attractive people in this movie.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's basically 4 Spider-Woman, if you count Madam Web as a Spider-Woman. Dakota Johnson plays Madam Web. I'm pretty sure she has no idea what a Madam Web is, and she just took this part because it's the leading role in a superhero film. This movie looks like everyone's confused to be there.
We need reporters to ask her if she knows anything about this character.
I think she's going to do a fine job. Like, she's a good actress. The cast is, like, pretty solid, but it just looks like a movie that doesn't really have an idea of what it's doing. I think it's going to be fun for, like, in that Morbius kind of way, where we're all going to have fun on the internet talking about it.
It's so bad it's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's already gotten memed with the voiceover narration of the trailer. Where she said, "Oh, he was in the forest with my mom."
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Before she died, researching spiders.
So bad. Like, Morbius ended up being, like, so bad it's bad, and we just kind of pumped memes out of it anyway. I think this has a chance of being so bad it's good. I'm hoping this is, like, a good theater experience. Whether it's good or bad, I'm hoping it's a lot of fun, and I think it will be.
That's great. I'm glad we got to talk about Madam Web on the podcast. My number 5 is Alien Romulus, which is in the Alien franchise. The film takes place between Alien and Aliens. However, it does not follow Ripley. It doesn't follow like the main story of those movies. So I'm curious to see like how it like fits into things. Ridley Scott is a producer on this movie. He's not directing it. It's directed by a guy named Fede Alvarez, who is mostly a horror director. He is probably most known for doing the Evil Dead remake, which I really liked. And he did a film called Don't Breathe, like 4 or 5 years ago, with Stephen Lang playing a blind guy that's like tracking people like home intruders through his house. So he's a good like low budget horror director. Obviously the Alien franchise is a little complicated, especially recently. There hasn't been a lot of like good stuff coming out of that franchise, but I think it's still an interesting world. Obviously the alien look, the xenomorph is iconic. I'm a big fan of Alien and Aliens. I think there's elements of like the more recent films that are good. I like Prometheus more than other people. I thought Alien Covenant was okay. Big fan of Alien versus Predator. The first Alien versus Predator is kind of a so bad it's good movie.
I think I watched that movie at my 10th birthday and then at another friend's 10th birthday. I think we watched Alien versus Predator.
Big movie for 10-year-olds.
I remember loving it. I had never seen a film like that before.
It comes out on August 16th. I am cautiously optimistic for this. I'll get out of bed for an Alien movie. Sounds cool.
Yeah, I think I can't like find fault in that because I think I've only ever seen Alien and Aliens, and those are both like classic great movies. And then Alien versus Predator, which I've only seen as a 10-year-old. So I've never seen the bad Aliens as an adult. So I would also be optimistic about this. To me, there are no bad Alien movies because I've only seen 3 of them.
Yeah, and it's also interesting to see an Alien movie that's not directed by Ridley Scott. So Alien 3 is directed by David Fincher in his directorial debut. Alien 3 is not good, but it's interesting enough to watch. And then Alien versus Predator is directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, the guy that did the Resident Evil movies, and he did
Mortal Kombat.
He did Event Horizon. He's a weird director.
He's good at making video game movies that are okay.
But when I looked at Fede Alvarez, I was like, that's interesting because the first Alien movie really is a horror film. It's a film about a monster stalking a crew through a ship, and it's really scary. So if he were to make an Alien film that felt more low budget like that, like the first Alien film, that would be interesting. And that the cast is like not like any big names on the cast too, which makes me also think like this has got like low budget horror vibes to it. So yeah, it seems interesting.
Nice.
So it's your number 4.
At number 4, I have a film that's currently titled Untitled Karate Kid Film. So they're making another one. They're making another Karate Kid. This is coming off the heels of Cobra Kai season whatever. I think Cobra Kai is ending, and they want to keep this alive, right? Like Ralph Macchio isn't doing any other work to my knowledge. So what they're doing is they're bringing in Jackie Chan's character from the Karate Kid reboot, the one that had Jaden Smith in it, and they're bringing back Danny LaRusso from the original Karate Kid and more recently from Cobra Kai, and they're combining those two universes.
It's like a multiverse film.
So, although Jackie Chan played the Mr. Miyagi type character in the Karate Kid reboot, his character was not named Mr. Miyagi. So, they're ostensibly going back and saying, hey, that reboot was actually a sequel. It's set in the same universe. And
It's just very similar stories.
yeah, just the exact same thing happened to these two kids, and we're gonna bring it all back around and have the original team up with the new Miyagi, and I think that's a very silly but fun idea. Cobra Kai has been like critically well received. I haven't watched it. You know, I've only seen the first Karate Kid and the reboot. I haven't watched any of the sequels or the TV show, but I just love the idea of like trying to weld the canons of these universes together. And the last time I checked, or the first time I saw like an ad for this movie, it was actually an ad for we're looking for the next Karate Kid. So they had not cast the titular Karate Kid yet when they announced this movie.
Incredible.
It's coming out next year.
They should just call it Karate Kid again.
I think they might.
Go the Halloween route, where every time you make a reboot, you just call it the same movie name again.
I would not be surprised if they called it The Karate Kid.
Do you know what date that's coming out?
This movie comes out on December 13th, so they've got time to cast that kid.
Okay, that's good. They have time. My number 4 is the Furiosa movie, which...
Oh, I have that at number 1.
That's your number 1? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we'll talk about it when we get to that then. We'll do your number 3 then.
My number 3 is just called, and I know nothing about this, it's called Untitled Jordan Peele Film. It's the 4th Jordan Peele film.
Yeah, listen, I mean, he's one of those directors, right?
Yeah.
That it doesn't matter what he makes interesting movies. So, like, is there any rumors of like what this film is about? Is it given any inclination?
Well, you know, I purposely didn't check because I wanted to be surprised. So I don't know.
I still haven't seen Nope. I heard kind of mixed things about it.
Nope's pretty good. Yeah, it's definitely the one where, like, I have friends who are like, this is the best movie of the year. And I have other friends being, like, pretty disappointed by it compared to, like, Get Out and Us. It's definitely different. There's no, like, major twists like Get Out and Us. But it is a very fun movie to watch. It's, like, all spectacle. It's very interesting. Yeah, it's definitely a more subdued movie, I feel like.
Yeah, he's kind of falling into the trap a little bit. I mean, we'll see how this new movie gets received, that he could be viewed as a guy that like peaked too early, potentially. Because Get Out was such a hit, like across all spectrums. Like it was really, really well timed for like that era and that type of like meta commentary. I thought Us was okay. I didn't think it was like spectacular or anything, but he's clearly a guy that has vision for his films, and he's clearly interested in telling unique stories. And I know he's somebody that's very committed to like primarily like black ensemble casts. So obviously that's going to rub some people the wrong way probably, but you know, if he's got a good story to his films, like who gives a shit?
Yeah.
It'll be interesting. This comes out in December, right?
Yeah, that's December 25th.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to, because Nope had like marketing behind it for like 6-8 months, something like that. They were marketing Nope for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, this has plenty of time to give us a title, give us some trailers, get everyone hyped about it. I think it's going to be good. Okay,
cool. My number 3 is an animated Lord of the Rings film called Lord of the Rings: War of the Rohirrim. Now, I'm actually curious. I'm an enormous Lord of the Rings fan. I would say that 3 Lord of the Rings films, if you think of them as one big movie, is probably my favorite movie of all time. Mm-hmm. Do you consider yourself like a big Lord of the Rings?
No, I wish I was, right? Like it's almost like a nerd blind spot for me, especially because I'm like into D&D and all that stuff, and I generally like that fantasy stuff. For me, I suffer from what I think a lot of people suffer from, where it's like these movies are a little slow and it's a lot of walking and talking and a lot of people with very similar sounding made up names. I have seen all 3 of the original movies. I did enjoy all 3 of them in the theater, so I like them, but I'm just not as behind it as
there's just some like it's not clicking.
Yeah, there's things that I can see in the movie where I'm like, I can see how this is or could be the greatest movie of all time, but it doesn't click for me as the greatest movie of all time, right? So like I think Peter Jackson builds an entire world in a way that almost no other director is able to do. Once you're in Middle Earth watching those movies, there's nothing that pulls you out. And I think even with like Star Wars, you can watch like good Star Wars movies and still be like, okay, I'm getting pulled out of this a little bit. I think Lord of the Rings, they craft a beautiful world that you just exist in during that 9 to 12 hours of watching it, depending if you're watching the extended cut. And so that I really admire, but it's not my favorite.
So Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim, it's not, Peter Jackson's not involved in this. It is an animated film that is, it looks like it's being released in theaters. I was trying to find like what streamer this is supposed to come to. I think they're just releasing it in theaters. It's coming out next December. It stars Brian Cox, who most people probably know is from Succession. This is the most recent thing he was in. He plays Helm Hammerhand. Which, for anybody that's watched The Two Towers, you've heard of Helm's Deep, which is where they hold up at the very end of the film. That's where, like, the 45-minute fight sequence happens. This is Helm. This is the Helm that Helm's Deep is named after. He is a leader of the Rohirrim, which are the horse lords of the Rohan, which Rohan is one of the kingdoms of men. And this film takes place like 250 years before The Two Towers. I'm not like an uber nerd with Lord of the Rings stuff, so I'm not sure if this is third age or second age that you're in at that point. Miranda Otto is reprising her role as Eowyn.
Oh, wow.
Which is interesting because she's not like one of those like super old characters. Like she's just a person in the Lord of the Rings film. So I'm guessing there's like some like flashbacking happening in this film. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan, and something that is coming out of this world that is not, like the Hobbit films. And I kind of liked the Amazon series. I know that by and large people did not like the Amazon series. I thought it was fine.
Now, is this film based on like a text from J.R.R. Tolkien, like, or is this a fully original story? Do you know?
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure exactly. I know that a lot of the appendices of his books go back and talk about things that happened in the Second Age. So, like in the timeline of Lord of the Rings, you have Sauron's like boss is this guy named Morgoth, who is like the real big bad of the world. And there was a giant fucking battle where they fought Morgoth, and he was destroyed. And then Sauron kind of tries to like pick up the that's the first age. Then like Sauron tries to like pick up the pieces, and then he gets defeated by an army of elves and men. And that's the battle you see at the very beginning of the first film. That's the end of the Second Age of Lord of the Rings. And then what you see in Lord of the Rings is the Third Age. I'm not sure exactly where this film is going to fall on the timeline. The thing about like the Amazon series like completely blurs the lines of like the book canon. They take events that were meant to happen like hundreds or thousands of years later and push them like way up into the Amazon series just for the sake of like streamlining things. So you look up like any lore channel on YouTube, like they all fucking hate the Amazon series because they're like, none of this is supposed to be happening in the way that you're depicting it. But needless to say, I'm excited for it. And I specifically did not pick out like Untitled X film for my top 5 list. So
Do you know like what the animation style is going to be? Is it going to be like a 3D type of thing?
yeah, I'm not sure. Funny enough, I think it was in the 80s. There was an animated Lord of the Rings movie that was made that is kind of like lost to time now because the Peter Jackson films happened.
Yeah, I think it's a Ralph Bakshi film. I think it's still highly regarded for sure. Like people who grew up on that movie love it. It's a cool little flick. I can't imagine they'll go back to that like old-timey 2D animation, but I think it would be so cool if they did.
Yeah, that'll be something. Yeah, I guess we'll have to see. I don't think there's no like trailers or anything out there for this film yet. But that's my number 3. So number 2 for you?
I'm sure you have this on your list, but my number 2 is Dune Part 2.
That's going to be slightly higher up on my list.
All right.
We'll talk about my number 2 then, which is Ballerina, which is the John Wick universe film. It is directed by Len Wiseman, who is the guy who did the Underworld films. He did our favorite film, Live Free or Die Hard. Shout out to Len Wiseman. Interesting fella. He worked under Roland Emmerich.
Oh, yeah.
Len Wiseman worked under Roland Emmerich for a good number of his films in the 90s and early 2000s. Kind of comes from this school of like campy, big budget films, which makes it very interesting that this is the guy that they got for this John Wick spinoff film. It's about Ana de Armas plays a ballerina who I'm guessing is from the same school that John Wick is like adopted into when he was younger. We see a little bit of the ballerina school in the John Wick films. Keanu Reeves is in this movie in some capacity. I'm guessing he's just like in a scene or something like that. The film takes place between John Wick 3 and John Wick 4 in the timeline. So I'm not exactly sure what the plot of this movie is going to be, and I'm a little concerned because it's not Chad Stahelski doing it. And these movies really are about the stunts and about the gunfighting. And the underworld films are not known for like amazing gunfighting. They're kind of like silly little monster movies. So I'm cautiously optimistic about this one as well. Ana de Armas is a really good actress. This film has a bunch of like the other actors from like the John Wick universe that are going to be in this. Like Lance Reddick's in this, even though he passed away last year. It should be interesting. So I'm excited for it.
I'm excited for that one too. I think even though the John Wick franchise may or may not have ended, this is such a cool world that they've crafted. It'd be nice to revisit it. And as for like, the stunt work and choreography, I think what makes John Wick so good is that so much of it is like a dance, that having the main character be a literal ballerina is going to play into that as well. I'm hoping that it's still equally artistic in its violence as the previous John Wick films.
Yeah, I mean, this film comes out June 7th, so they're clearly setting this thing up to be like big time summer blockbuster movie. If the first trailer of this movie is like really good, this movie can make a ton of money.
Do you know what its budget is?
I didn't see the budget online. I'm not sure if it's publicly available yet.
Yeah, I'm curious if it's got like a John Wick 4 level budget just right off the bat.
Okay, so your number one is Furiosa, which was my number 4.
So Furiosa is a prequel to Mad Max Fury Road, and it follows the character that Charlize Theron played in that movie, Furiosa. Here she is a younger version played by Anya Taylor-Joy. The trailer just came out recently. It looks beautiful. It looks like the aesthetic is very similar to all the things that we love in Mad Max Fury Road. You can just see the cohesiveness of George Miller's vision right off the bat. Mad Max Fury Road is this beloved action film that like really stuffy film nerds love and general audiences adore. It's just like a greatest of all time. I don't personally expect Furiosa to like be as good. I think generally prequels have a really hard time being as good as the original that they're based off of. But I think if it even gets close to that, it's a contender for like best movie of the year.
Yeah, and this movie is almost not really a prequel. It's basically a Mad Max movie that does not have Mad Max as the main character. The Furiosa character and the Mad Max character, you can kind of like interchange them a little bit here. It seems like functionally they're being treated the same. And especially in Mad Max Fury Road, where like most of the movie is about Max trying to like escape these people. That seems like what they're setting up with Furiosa.
Yeah. It definitely feels like Mad Max Fury Road redone, but I think Anya Taylor-Joy is a really engaging actress. She's like very fun to watch in pretty much everything she does. I loved her in The Menu. I loved her in Queen's Gambit. She's just one of those up and coming or already A-list performers that makes everything she does a little bit better. So I just think it's going to be great.
Yeah, and Chris Hemsworth plays the villain of the movie.
And he's been showing his chops a lot too recently. I think he's a great leading man. He's working with George Miller's Australian, right? So
Yes, this movie is the biggest budget film ever shot in Australia. $233 million budget. Part of the reason why Fury Road took forever to make is because he kept running out of money to make the film.
Yeah.
So this one, like, they wrote him a check, and they were like, hey, go make another Mad Max movie.
Yeah.
It will be interesting to see, like, does this franchise hold up without, like, Mad Max? I think this is another one of those, like, one of those movies where, isn't it called like Furiosa, like a Mad Max story or something like that?
Yeah, it's called Furiosa, a Mad Max saga.
Yeah.
It's a stupid name.
Which is, yeah, you could just call it Furiosa. People know what it is. Anybody that knows anybody that's about this franchise knows what the Furiosa character is. But I understand why they got to do it. It's for marketing reasons.
It's dumb, but the trailer looks good. The posters look good. The whole thing just looks like it's going to be a really fun time.
What they need in the trailers, though, is for the first opening title card needs to say from the director of March of the Penguins. That'll really get you going.
God, what a good filmography this guy has.
All right, so my number 1
and my number 2
is Dune Part 2. Listen, Jason, we're big Dune heads here on the Over Under podcast.
It's a little against my will, but living with Dylan for so long and being friends with Dylan for so long, I have been Dune pilled very hard.
Yeah, we're big fans of the Dune board game.
We
where
play it all the time.
we have slowly indoctrinated our friends in into playing this Dune board game that takes like 3+ hours to play.
People can't be friends with us unless they learn the rules to this game. It's a whole thing.
But Dune Part 2, obviously the sequel to the first one, they took the first Dune book and they split it into 2 movies, which is smart. It's a weird spot where they cut in the book because they cut right before there's a time jump in the book.
Oh, okay.
So we'll see how they handle it. This movie is like long as hell. It's like 2 hours and 45 minutes or something like that. So clearly there's a lot of stuff that Denis Villeneuve is putting into this. They've been doing the marketing and the press for this movie for a long time at this point. Obviously, they had like magazine covers and shit like that and press junkets all scheduled out because this movie is supposed to come out in like October or something like that. Mm-hmm. This is like the prime example of a film that like it got completely screwed by the SAG strike. They were like, get this thing the hell out of here if we can't have this all-star cast of actors like marketing it for us. Because I mean, along with Chalamet and Zendaya and that entire cast, I mean, they're adding Florence Pugh, they're adding Austin Butler, they're adding Christopher Walken, Léa Seydoux. I don't know who else I'm forgetting. Like they added like a bunch of people to this already all-star cast, and it's going to be great. There is one specific character that I feel like they're hiding from the trailers, which I find very interesting. I wonder if that's intentional.
Who I haven't read this book, so
Oh, you haven't read the book?
who is that?
I don't think it's a spoiler to say, but Paul's mom is pregnant with his sister. And she has the child like after she goes through this like Bene Gesserit ritual, and it gives the child like prescience, so the child's able to access the memories of its ancestors. And basically what it results in is the kid can like talk like immediately when it's born.
Yeah. Huh.
And so by the time we do the flash forward, the kid's like 5 years old or something, but they like talk like an adult, and they're like, it's a very interesting character. If you watch the David Lynch one, there's some really funny clips out there of the child using the Bene Gesserit voice. And it's great. Her name is Aaliyah. So I don't know if there's like a specific actress that like a younger actress that they're trying to get for the Aaliyah role that they're just like hiding from people, or it's possible the character's not in the movie at all, which I think would be an enormous missed opportunity. But I trust Denis. I'm insanely excited for this movie. It comes out March 1st. Can't come soon enough.
I think that's the only one on either of our lists where it's only coming out next year because of the strike. So that should be interesting.
And it appears to be at least the second film in the franchise now, because the first one made enough money that the studios weren't like scared off from making more of them. Like what would happen with like Denis' Blade Runner film. They were like, yeah, you ain't doing more of these.
Yeah, I think Denis' goal is to make 3 movies total, with the first 2 covering the first book, and then the third one fully covering the second book.
Yeah, which is called Dune Messiah, which he's working on the screenplay of Dune Messiah right now. Dune Messiah definitely has less like major events in it that need to be translated into the movie, so I think you can do that book as one film. Mm-hmm. And then the next book in the series is called Children of Dune, which follows Paul's children, which is fairly like loosely connected. There's like an insane time jump between that book and God Emperor Dune, which is the next one in the series, which if we ever get a God Emperor Dune movie, it will be my favorite movie of all time. I don't give a shit of the film quality. It will be my favorite film of all time. I'll be like that guy that watched Captain Marvel like 400 times in the theater and then took a selfie with Brie Larson.
Yeah.
Brie Larson is like security.
That would be cool. Who would you cast as Paul's children?
There's a Children of Dune sci-fi series that came out, and one of the kids is James McAvoy in one of his earliest roles. What actor would you cast as the giant sandworm person in God Emperor Dune?
We're spoiling the Dune franchise so hard.
Spoilers for if you look up God Emperor Dune, it's literally the cover of the book. It's the giant sandworm person.
So yeah, I haven't read these books, but ostensibly Paul's son is like one of the main characters in Children of Dune, and then by the 4th book, he becomes a sandworm. He becomes a Shai Hulud. He like merges with one.
Yeah, with a sand trout, which is a baby version of a worm.
Okay. And then he's a God Emperor, too. Yeah, I don't know who I'm casting for that. I do think James McAvoy is, like, a strong pick, because I could see him being, like, Timothée Chalamet's son in the distant future, all grown up and then turned into a worm.
The problem is that Chalamet and Zendaya are both, like, I think they're, like, 26 or something like that, but they look like they're 17. They look like children. So having them have children is a little bit of a tough sell. I'm curious if they try to like age Chalamet up a little bit in this movie. Do they give him like a beard or something like that in the back half of the movie when he goes from being, Paul Atreides to Muad'Dib, when he turns into like the final form, the final form version of that character. It'll be interesting. I'm also looking forward to Austin Butler who's playing Fade Routha, who's like meant to be the direct foil of Paul Atreides. He's kind of like a failed version of the Kwisatz Haderach character.
Okay.
For anybody listening at home, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. No, we welcome Dune heads on this show. We want all of our... Actually, if you don't love Dune, stop listening to us.
It's not a matter of if we're going to be doing a Dune podcast. The question is, how many Dune podcasts are we going to be doing?
We'll go one by one.
At minimum, we're going to do an episode on the David Lynch Dune, and then we'll do an entire episode on Just God Emperor Dune, the book. just that book.
It'll be the only book we ever talk about on this podcast.
It is a series that high barrier of entry, because the first book is super long because one, it's a long story. Two, the entire back of the book is a glossary of terms, because all these are made up words that Frank Herbert came up with. It's not like Lord of the Rings where like elves, goblins, like these are words that just, Tolkien, kind of like co-opted into his universe. Like Frank Herbert just made shit up. And then made up his own pronunciations of things, because a lot of these are like old Arabic words that he's repurposing.
Yeah, science fiction writing can be kind of challenging to get into. Like there's this barrier to entry where you have to accept that you have to learn a whole new set of vocabulary, and it's not going to be useful anywhere outside of these books. But with Dune, you're making this commitment, and now it's really paying off. You're getting a second movie from Denis Villeneuve. You're probably getting a third. It's a lot more pervasive in the culture at this point. One of the greatest board games of all time. Like, we love any Dune content being added to the canon.
Yeah, and you're right. I think Villeneuve is straight up one of the best working directors right now. I think it's a dream come true that he's working on this Dune franchise. I think he's the absolute pitch perfect director to do the Dune franchise.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's like sinking his teeth into this is just, it's awesome. It's so exciting. Because like I remember like reading Dune in high school 15 years ago, and you would read back then like, oh, they can't do a Dune movie. It's a book that is unadaptable. It can't be made into a film. And like he's doing it.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
I think with Dune, you really need someone who can direct action and like a classic hero's journey. And then you also need someone who's like an intellectual and can subvert the hero's journey and show like the effects of all that violence. And Denis Villeneuve has proven himself as like a very capable director that's also just a very, very smart and understands subject matters on like a deep level. And that comes across in the first film. So
yeah, and he's clearly on that Christopher Nolan level of director that can just pull any actors that he wants, and they'll just like drop what they're doing and come like work on his project in like any capacity.
Yeah, you love to see it.
So I can't wait. Dune's gonna be so fucking good, man.
Hell yeah.
But that's gonna be it for our top 5 anticipated films of 2024. A lot of films that we did not get into. We didn't really touch on any like superhero projects. It's kind of the year without superhero movies a little bit. Like you said, there's Deadpool 3 and
Oh yeah, I meant to bring this up when I talked about Madam Web, but we're getting, I think, 2 other Sony Spider-Verse projects without Spider-Man. We're getting Kraven the Hunter, and we're getting Venom 3. So there's going to be 3 movies coming out in Sony's superhero universe, and only the one from the MCU. So it's definitely the tables turning there.
yeah, so it'll be interesting. Definitely want to be getting into seeing more films in theaters next year for sure. It should be interesting. Especially like when you look at like the December slate, like there's no big Marvel movie, there's no Avatar movie next year, which are like those are going to be like the big films that come out every year typically in December. No Star Wars, there's not a Star Wars film coming out this year, right?
There might not be a single Star Wars film that's currently listed. I think you're right.
So that's interesting. Like there's a bunch of ones in production, but yeah, Star Wars is like on hiatus now. So just like those really big franchise, and like we're Calm Before the Storm with James Gunn's DC right now. Weird movie year, but I think there's going to be some good stuff in here regardless.
Yeah, we definitely found some gems in that list.
All right, cool. Yeah, so let us know in the comments, everybody. What are some of your most anticipated films for 2024? Let us know what you think of our picks, of our top 5. Are we idiots? Are we prescient? Are we weirdos for talking about Dune for 15 minutes? But anyway, that's going to be it. Over Under Podcast 2024. Got a lot of really cool episode ideas. Honestly, we have more ideas for stuff than we have like time to shoot and like edit podcasts. Yeah. It's going to be really good.
Definitely going to be fun. Definitely stick with us through this year. 2024, good year.
Yeah. So, don't forget to like, sub, rate us on Apple Podcasts, 5 stars, all that good stuff.
Please.
But that's going to do it for us, guys. For myself, for Jason, we will catch you guys next year on the Over Under Movie Podcast. See you at the movies.
Year's.
Happy New Year, everybody.